So, welcome to NIPSI Presents FAFSA Focus, Building Partnerships for District Success. It is our third and final session of the three-part series. I am Allison Regolato. I am NIPSI's Program Director, and I'm excited to have you all here today. Before we jump in, just some quick engagement norms. We've all been on Zoom for a long time, but just some fun reminders. If you can rename yourself to display your organization, your name and your pronouns, so we know, who you are, where you're from, how to address you, be great. Using virtual meeting space etiquette. So if you're not speaking, mute. This can be a very big Zoom meeting. We're not running it as a webinar. So if you come off mute, we're all going to hear. But if you do want to chat us, feel free to drop your questions or thoughts in the chat. Or if you want to come off mute, just raise your hand so we know and are not talking over each other. We would really like to keep the conversation today solutions focused. The FAFSA this year has been challenging, and it is easy to kind of go down the rabbit holes of the struggles that have happened, which is, we're here to hear them, but also as we engage, make sure that we're trying to be focused on solving problems or addressing issues. And then finally, strive to be engaged. I know everyone is busy, so engage as you can. We're just excited to have you here, and this works best if you're engaged in asking questions and connecting with the people in the room. So quickly, our agenda for today, we're going to quickly touch on NIPSI and its relationship with FAFSA, the goals for the FAFSA Focus series, and then we're going to jump into hearing from our partners at National Louis University and Hope Chicago. Excited to hear their FAFSA completion strategies. We're going to do a quick idea exchange, and then we'll wrap up. I'm sure this hour is going to go extremely fast. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Joyce Brown.
Thanks, Allison, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joyce Brown. I'm one of the NIPSI founders, and I want to add my welcome to all of you to the webinar, Building Partnerships for District Strategies. We have some fantastic speakers today, and I can't wait for you to hear from them. But before we begin, I just want to share a little bit about the NIPSI organization. We're a relatively new nonprofit that partners with school district leaders and college access organizations across the nation to help develop structured district-wide post-secondary advising systems, integrating three components of the NIPSI model: leadership, data strategy, and engaging counselors as leaders. The NIPSI model implementation is delivered through expert guidance through a lens of practitioner experience, as all of us have served at the school and district level and within nonprofit organizations. The NIPSI team focuses on this idea that belief brings change. When stakeholders have a believe mindset, positive change can happen for all students, especially underrepresented populations. Our aim always is to maximize post-secondary success for all students, and FAFSA, of course, we know is very important. The work of NIPSI is rooted in the word believe, and the NIPSI model is based on the work that the NIPSI founders did at Chicago Public Schools over 20 years ago when we helped establish the first ever Department of College and Career Readiness, and were tasked with the goal of believing that we could implement structured strategies to ensure that over 500,000 students at that time understood that college was indeed possible in their life. Ironically, making up FAFSA tracking was one of our strategies that we created with our state partner. We are simply thrilled that FAFSA has been made a graduation requirement in states across the nation, and many districts are implementing tracking completion strategies. On the next screen is a visual of the NIPSI model for post-secondary success. At NIPSI, we believe that at NIPSI, we want you to continue to engage with us around this model. So a little bit about the model. Notice that student post-secondary success is at the center. Within each of the three components, there's a belief mindset. Leadership is important because student success must be structured and organized around strategies and have a clear plan for increasing post-secondary outcomes that are tied to measurable data points. Therefore, data strategy is important to the belief framework because districts must commit to using reliable data to inform strategy development and identify needed interventions. Finally, there must be a belief that the value of empowering school counselors to lead post-secondary access work in their schools and across districts and engage with community partners in the process is important. Counselors no longer must remain at the periphery of post-secondary advising, but instead must have a clear role to position students on pathways leading to post-secondary opportunities at the end of high school. Leadership, data strategy, and school counselor engagement are three fundamental frameworks of the NIPSE model, but alone those components are not enough. We know that the work cannot take place with structures alone, and so we advancing the following practices of the outer circle: collaboration, communication, relationships, and shared accountability for student success. The NIPSE team is always excited about the opportunity to work with others that embrace a similar vision of post-secondary success for every student. We hope that you continue to engage with us. Please enjoy the webinar. Back to you, Allison.
Thanks, Joyce. All right, so quickly, I just want to highlight the goals for this series and for today's session. And so one of our goals is to highlight and celebrate these organizations that have joined us today who are proactively addressing the challenges of the new FAFSA. They've given a lot of time and effort to be here and put together their presentations to share their strategies with you. And so we just really want to celebrate and thank them, as well as remind you guys to engage with them, ask them questions, and get insights. If there's things that they didn't present on, feel free to ask, because we want to build this collaborative community around FAFSA support. And so my hope for you is that you walk away today feeling like you can at least ask one person a question about FAFSA completion or connect with somebody, or get a question answered. Just really want to build that community and that feeling of not being alone and having to solve the struggles of FAFSA this year. And then finally, we're just looking to compile resources and strategies that can be shared. And so in our first session, we heard from some school districts. In our second session, we heard from Chicago Public Schools and another college access group in Texas. And then finally today, we're hearing from National Louis and Hope Chicago. And so all of these groups are approaching FAFSA slightly differently. And so we're just compiling these resources that we can share with you all. And without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce the speakers from National Louis University. We have Michele Peterson, who's Director of Undergraduate Partnerships and Operations. And we have Brigid Callahan, who is Executive Director of Student Finance, joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. And hello, everyone. Good to be here with you all today. Again, my name is Michele Peterson. I'm the Director of Undergrad Partnerships and Operations at National Louis University, and joined by my wonderful colleague, Brigid Callahan, our Executive Director of Student Finance. Before we start really diving into FAFSA challenges and strategies for incoming freshmen, I want to just give you a brief overview about National Louis if you're unfamiliar with us. So next slide for me, please. Thank you. So National Louis University, we're a private nonprofit university established 140 years ago by a woman named Elizabeth Harrison. She was one of Chicago's leading organizers of the kindergarten movement, who really helped change the nation's perception of what can be accomplished when we take active experiential approaches to education. So through Elizabeth Harrison's leadership, NLU started out as Miss Harrison's training school way back when, a revolutionary college for teachers. And by 1930, we expanded beyond the kindergarten training movement and established our National College of Education, the first teacher licensure program in Illinois, and one of the first four-year bachelor's degrees in education in the country. By 1986, we began offering programs in other fields, teaching much more than education, and today we're comprised of 7 colleges, including our undergraduate college for first-time freshmen, which was established in 2015. The narrative around higher ed at that time was about higher ed being too expensive, in particular for our marginalized communities, wherein people would finish degrees and then not be able to persist into getting a job. So NLU really set out to change that narrative around higher education by reimagining how to drive an education program for traditionally first-generation college goers that was both affordable and that provided wraparound support services that enhanced student outcomes. So today, our undergraduate student population makes up approximately half of our overall student population, which is amazing to see the growth that we've experienced over the last several years. We're very proud of that, and we're proud of the strides that we've made towards really breaking down barriers and making a college education affordable and within reach for all students. So we have a couple campuses. Our main campus is located right in the heart of downtown Chicago. And thus, as you might assume, we've got a lot of Chicago-based partners as well. So Chicago Public Schools, for example, is one of our top partners. Noble Schools, plus some post-secondary access partners as well, like One Goal, Chicago Scholars, and Hope Chicago, who is on the call with us today. We also have some suburban campuses as well. We've got a Wheeling campus, as well as a campus in Lisle that will be opening in fall 2025 for undergraduate students. So we like to keep our suburban partners close at heart as well. So that's a little bit about National Louis University. I'm actually going to go ahead and hand it over to Brigid so we can dive into the FAFSA.
Right. Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everybody. So you guys are all aware we're having some FAFSA issues. So just a quick little slide we pulled down from NCAN, just some of the data that we have seen published. So 65% last year nationally at this time, 29% currently. Obviously, FAFSA got a later start this year, and it wasn't the greatest launch. But at the same time, students have had the time now to make up for those numbers. So we're still seeing students across the nation, as well as the state of Illinois, just significant decreases in FAFSA completion, which I'm sure is not a surprise to any of you as well. Alrighty, so some of the challenges that we've found and we've run into, and again, these are not unique to National Louis, but the FAFSA timeline itself. So traditionally, you guys know it's open in October. This time it was open December 31st for about 20 minutes, it seems, and then relaunched again after the new year. And that has skewed all of our timelines, not just, again, National Louis, but schools as a whole, as far as when we start reaching out to students, when we start hosting workshops, when we start sending out estimates. So that's been something that we've had to work around. Bugs and glitches, the students have not had the greatest experience. I can say confidently that if a student did not experience any issues, this is really a great thing for them. So the simplification, or as we call in the financial aid world, the complification, has actually been great for students themselves. So it's removed some questions. It's made it a little bit easier to transition some data over from the IRS. So it's been amazing. However, there were so many glitches with the actual application. We were finding it hard to get students to the finish line. And so those have also been some of the issues that we've experienced. Was student would come in, we would start helping them. They'd get to a certain point and then something would bug out, something wouldn't submit, something wouldn't save. So that's been a little hard to work through as well. And then the delays. So because of the delay in the FAFSA data, and I don't know if you guys are counting the days like I was, but last Friday was FAFSA day, March 15th. We've slowly started getting those FAFSAs in, but that's a significant delay. We typically start outreaching to our first-time freshmen at the beginning of February about what they're eligible for in regards to an estimate, and we have not been able to do that since, and that is going to be about a 2-month delay overall. Again, not unique to National Louis. All of our area schools have experienced the same issue. All right, so what are we doing to address some of those challenges? Well, the first thing we're doing is partnering with ISAC. So if you're not from Illinois, you may not be familiar, but ISAC is our state student assistance commission, and they not only do they monitor and provide our state grants, but they also do a lot of stuff with FAFSA completion and support at high schools with universities. And so they've been really helpful coming in and helping us kind of retrain the brain. If you've been doing this for 2 minutes or 25 years like I have, all of these FAFSA things are new. So everybody was on a level playing field, and we really worked with them to not only train our staff, but also it was like training the trainer so we could host our own workshops. Developing general estimated award letters based on general student scenarios. So we would really prefer to send something out based on the student aid index that the student actually has, but we are not at that point yet. And so what we have been doing is developing like a common student scenarios guide so that students can see themselves in kind of one of the various scenarios and kind of figure out, okay, well, this, it appears what I'm eligible for. Again, not anything official, but at least something to go on. And then utilizing the 2023-2024 Pell and MAP grant amounts. So Pell did not change for next year. MAP grant so far has not changed for next year. And so we've been able to utilize those dollar amounts and those charts to do individual student estimates if a student comes on campus with that student aid index. And I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle.
Thanks, Brigid. So thinking about just those FAFSA challenges, it's really important to talk about and think about how we communicate with schools and districts and really work together as we're all really collectively in this together, right? And that's kind of been the one silver lining, so to speak, of all these changes with the FAFSA. So we've done our very best to engage with partners, establish and maintain meaningful relationships in which collaboration, communication, and mutual respect is key. It's really crucial to foster open dialogue to understand needs and maintain transparency through that collaboration process. So some of the things that we've been doing in terms of engagement strategies is frequent one-on-one check-ins with partners, schools, and districts to talk through challenges, issues, updates, and again, keep that door open, keep that transparency flowing. We've also been really active partners with our partners, right? So participating in anything and everything that we are invited to. And so some examples of those engagement opportunities is participation in the Chicago Public Schools Compact meetings. So if you're not familiar with Compact meetings with CPS, CPS brings together other local colleges and universities to really all collectively work towards term start each year, right? And so what are the kind of the most important components that we need to keep top of mind? Is that student finance related? Is it coaching and advising? Is it enrollment? And all other things as part of that process of a student going from high school to college. What do we all need to be aware of? So CPS has been great hosting these meetings and bringing kind of all colleges and universities in the area together to think tank together, share trends and best practices, talk about what's working for us and what's not only related to financial aid and the FAFSA, but all other aspects of that process of a student transitioning into college. CPS College Transition Symposium is another opportunity or example in which we've been providing just transparency into our processes and what's going on with the FAFSA. In fact, we're presenting to both tomorrow and Thursday for CPS around trends and kind of what we're seeing with the FAFSA and things of that nature. So again, really just being open and available to engage with partners, school districts is really key. And then the partner communications piece is really important as well. So we try our very best to send out regular email updates about our undergraduate college, about our enrollment timeline, financial aid and admissions updates, always keeping our partners in the loop. And always attached to those email updates are enrollment milestone reports that show our partners where their students are at in the enrollment process, if they've applied to National Louis, kind of what stage they're in that application process, including if they've applied for the FAFSA and if they've cleared the verification process, et cetera. We've also done a lot of really good work around communicating and keeping that transparency open with our students and our prospective students and their families. Obviously this is a new process around the FAFSA for all of us, including for our students and their parents. So maintaining transparency and openness is key. We do this by regular email updates. Students enrolled at National Louis will get generated emails sent to them throughout the enrollment pipeline. So as they complete milestones towards becoming fully enrolled and being able to start class, they'll receive email updates on steps that they need to take or keep in mind, important dates and deadlines. But we'll also send out just general email updates to students and parents around what's going on with the UGC or the undergraduate college and the FAFSA. We also host on-campus visits and workshops. This is something that we've done traditionally over the years at NLU, and we're really ramping this piece up, in particular this year as FAFSA changes have taken place, just to make sure students have that opportunity to come in, meet with us, become informed on what's going on with the FAFSA, receive support, and the knowledge and tools that they need to make the best decisions. We host partner student visits as well. So we'll bring our partners to campus and their students to have curated visits where they learn about National Louis University. We'll bring student finance into those meetings as well, so students can remain informed in that way. And then there are scholarship opportunities and conversion events as well. So a conversion event is like an admit day, for example. Admit day is an opportunity for students to come to campus and commit to National Louis University, submit their deposit. It's really like an open house, right, where they can walk around, speak with faculty, students, staff, and again, get the information that they need to be able to start strong in classes. All right, I'll turn it back over to Brigid.
Great, thank you. So what's working, what's not? So we mentioned that partnering with ISAC has been super helpful. Partnering with CPS and College Compact, like Michele mentioned, there's a lot of schools in those meetings, universities, I should say, and we bounce ideas off each other. We try to figure out workarounds for things. We've been talking a lot to each other about some of the FAFSA simplification issues we've experienced. So that's been really helpful. And then keeping school districts and post-secondary access partners closer than ever via the engagement opportunities. So Michele mentioned some of those a minute ago. We try to keep them in the loop, even if there's nothing new to say, we at least try to engage them and let them know like, hey, we're still working on it. We still have this. Here's what we have planned for the future. What's not working. So students have been advised, at least locally, to wait to commit until award letters or estimated award letters are received, which is understandable, but that is impacting all of our different numbers, all of our different outreach attempts and things like that. So it's really just a waiting game at this point to get them those estimates so that they can feel comfortable committing to National Louis and other schools as well. Not having FAFSA information readily available in order to advise students. If we have a walk-in, we want to make sure that we are giving them the correct information. And yes, they can pull that up, but sometimes students can't access their email. They don't know who sent it, especially our first-time freshmen. They need a little bit more hand-holding. So instead of us being able to just go and pull up a few screens and tell them an estimate or work through them through their eligibility, we have to wait for them to find the email, see if they're selected for verification, talk to them about, generalities, etc. And then not knowing who has completed a FAFSA versus who hasn't. So by now we have already sent reminders out. We have sent workshop reminders out. We have sent a lot of different things out to students who we anticipate should be completing a FAFSA, both new students as well as continuing. And unfortunately, because we don't have that data, we can send general reminders, of course, but we cannot send that targeted data that says, hey, you had a FAFSA last year. We don't have one yet for this year. What's going on? Like, let us know if we can help. So that's been kind of a struggle. And so right now we're kind of in a holding pattern as far as some of our communications. So award letter impacts, we are working against an estimated 2-month delay. So I mentioned earlier, we usually start this in February. Now we're hoping for mid-April, just depending on how the batches from the Department of Education with the FAFSA information work. And then of course, impacting the commitments. So that is also impacting some of our year-over-year data. But how we're keeping students engaged are on-campus visit opportunities. We also have admit days. So we invite all the students that are early admitted or admitted to the school so far to come and join us. We do a lot of student finance talking, and we also do tours. We do a lot of program type activities. So it's really a great day for students to come in and kind of get a feel for the campus and a feel for NLU. And then application and FAFSA workshops. We host workshops for both applications as well as FAFSA. So we hope that students come and join us for one or both of those so we can help them get the party started. All right, so FAFSA moving forward. So we're going to continue to play catch up. We're really hoping that we get all of those FAFSAs from the Department of Ed in the next 2 weeks so we can start doing not only estimates, but targeted outreach. Shorter turnaround time. So now we are really trying, we'd like to do things before May 1st. We know that's usually National Decision Day, but that of course date is just a date at this point because we may not have that same information to share with students that we've had in years past to help them make that informed decision. And then again, later commitments. So students might be committing later than usual just because they're not comfortable committing until they see what they may be eligible for, not just at National Louis, but all schools. And then rolling admissions, so minimal to no deadlines. So we have no submit by this date. We have no turn in things by this date. We are rolling admissions. We always have been. So that's really nice that students can have that flexibility to wait a little bit longer if they need to. We are embracing flexibility, so we are prepared to pivot and host later or additional events. So of course, our admit days usually start in April. They still plan currently to start in April, but we will also have some in later just in case, again, students are waiting to make those commitments until they have an award letter. And then workshops, increasing the amount of financial aid workshops offered. So typically, like I said, we have them every other week or so. We're going to ramp that up once we get all the FAFSA data so that we know that we're being able to help all the students that may be waiting to complete a FAFSA or that have experienced issues making updates. So students haven't been able to update the FAFSA either. So if they made a mistake and they saw it and they're like, uh-oh, they haven't been able to go in and fix that yet, they will be able to fix, I think, mid-April. So we're expecting a lot of students to come through and need some assistance making minor updates or having parents sign, etc. And I think that is it for us. Any questions for Michele or myself?
Feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute. I
And
do
we
have
will
a
man.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I have a question just that came up, so I'll get us started and maybe somebody will drop something in the chat. You mentioned a common student scenario guide. Who did you
Mhm.
share that with, and like how did you create that? Is that like a resource you could share?
Yeah, yes. So we are still kind of finalizing the details of it, but yes, we could share that out. It's just basically like if you're a student that's anticipated to come for 15 hours and you have a 0 SAI, here's what you can expect and need. So it's similar to some of the other things that we see, just kind of like a usual student. So that's what we're working on for our freshmen, just so that our enrollment team has something to share, because right now they're kind of at a point where they're like, so, okay, so we want to make sure that they have something to share out while we're waiting for the actual ICERs.
Okay, that sounds great. Anybody else have any thoughts? I loved hearing about your partnership with the districts, and for NIPSI, we work with school districts, and all I keep thinking about is the advice that at the district there should be someone partnering with your most frequent flyer colleges, right? So you should have a point of contact at the district to work with those, to have a point of contact at the colleges your students are most likely to attend, and really build up the communication between those two folks. And the person at the district is then responsible for disseminating the information that comes from that partnership work. It sounds like you guys have done that with quite a few districts and partners. So exciting to hear. All right. If no one has any questions for them, they're going to hang out for a while. So if you have questions that come up, feel free to drop it in the chat. But we're going to keep going, and we are going to move. Thank you, ladies, Brigid and Michele. Appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and your work. And so now I'm going to introduce our next guest, Hope Chicago. So we're going to hear from Michele Howard, Chief Program Officer over at Hope Chicago. I'm so glad my friend could be here with us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much again, Allison, for inviting Hope Chicago into this space. I think it's really incredible to be in such a thoughtful space, and then to come right behind one of our very crucial partners, National Lewis. So happy to talk through who we are as Hope Chicago and really how we've been able to make some impact. So again, my name is Michele Howard. I could never come into an education space, and not first acknowledge Chicago Public Schools and the incredible work that the district has been doing for years to really be able to put a system in place for students and families really to be able to engage around FAFSA completion. None of this happens without that first. So here at Hope Chicago, our quick fast facts, we're a partner with both the district, Chicago Public Schools, as well as several other partners across our city and state. But our most important partners are our 5 high schools. They are in 5 unique communities in Chicago. And we were very intentional around selecting the 5 high schools that we were going to serve initially, because we knew that it was really important to make sure that, one, we were working with high schools that were from neighborhoods, because we want to make a neighborhood impact. But also, one of the things that we looked at when selecting these schools was their post-secondary teams, right? And the investment into their post-secondary teams. And so we've been greatly appreciative of the partnership that we've had with the district that has allowed us to really lift some of the work that's happening in the schools. On the flip side, the other side of our partnerships are our institutional partners. So here you see that we have 44 programmatic and post-secondary partners. We break that down to about 29 institutional partners. And so that is every public institution in every cardinal direction in the state. Those are our partners, as well as a few private institutions as well. And you can see them listed here in our map of Illinois. Next slide. Some important things to know about Hope Chicago is that we are a college promise program. So different than kind of a typical scholarship, we've made a promise to 4,000 students who were sitting within the 5 high schools in 2021. Our first class was the class of 2022. That was our first cohort. And right now we have 2 cohorts of students who are in college and 2 cohorts of students who are still sitting in high school with the anticipation of going to college. In our first 2 years, we had about 30%, we saw a 30% increase in students accessing 2- and 4-year institutions, and that's 2 years in a row. And so basically we have no GPA requirement, no test score requirement. If the student can get into one of our in-network institutions, we support them. So that means that they have to be admissible. And once they get admitted, we work with them to make sure that they are enrolled and then that they persist. Some quick facts that I think are really crucial to understanding the impact of these 5 schools across this state was that our first cohort, the class of 2022, accounted for 21% of the students overall who were going to institutions statewide. So there was an increase in students going across the state, and 21% of those students were Hope Scholars. So I say that to say, it's incredibly important to understand that, and I just learned today when I was looking at some to and through data, that one of our schools, Morgan Park, is one of the top feeders of African-American graduates in this district. And so when we really, again, dig down into who we're serving, I think that's the most important part about how we posture ourselves here at Hope Chicago. The last big fact that I'll say about college access and college going around our scholars is that 42% of our in-network scholars from our first cohort went to school outside of Chicago. So again, they are making the truck to go to these institutions that are not as close, but again, that are providing them, with the higher education opportunity. So just some of those quick facts that I think help you understand the demographic of students that we're serving. And then there's another big fact before I start talking about, FAFSA and all of that, because again, it's important to understand the who. In our first cohort, we had about 81% who were first generation. And then in our second cohort, there's about 80% of scholars who are first generation. So again, we are a 2-generation model. I failed to say that. So we're trying to see what this looks like when we provide an opportunity for a traditional age scholar and then give that access to their parent as well. But for today, we're going to primarily focus on our traditional age scholars and how they're faring with the FAFSA. Next slide. I wanted to make sure that I gave a perspective of where are our students going. And so again, this is 73% of our scholars right now are attending 4-year colleges that are in network, which if they're attending an in-network school, that means that we're paying the full cost of attendance for them to attend. If they go to a school outside of our network, let's say, let's just pick a great institution, a great college in this country. Let's go with Howard University. So if they decide to go to a school like Howard University, they would be considered an out-of-network scholar for us at Hope Chicago, but they would get up to $2,000 in an education subsidy towards their degree completion. So again, there are students who are both in and out of network for us, and I want to make sure that that is noted in the information that we share. But as you see in this slide, the majority of our students who are in network are going to schools in high numbers. The city colleges is obviously still a big and great space where our students are matriculating. UIC, you see UIC is a big one. What I saw today is that Northern is one of the top graduating institutions of African-American students in the state. And we do have, we've seen a nice chunk of students go to Northern as well. So ultimately, this is just giving you an understanding of where our students are across the state. So now let's talk about what have we been doing. I want to be very clear here. None of what can happen here at Hope Chicago happens without partnership. So our goal is obviously completion. What we believe is the biggest investment that we have outside of money is time, and partnership is what we can control, right? And control loosely. But partnership is something that's really allowed us to be able to support scholars. So those are kind of the big three things that I want to be clear about. We know that completion is the goal. We know that we need time to really be able to help students maneuver. But what we are doing best is using our partnerships to really help us address the concerns that we're seeing with scholars. So, you know, typical like everyone else across the board, it has been problematic. Previously, we did a lot of work around in the high schools around financial aid completion. CPS has a full-fledged system. There's a financial aid dashboard that was established and that we had access to because we serve the whole school. That has allowed us to really have intel and information from the district. That remains the same with us. You know, obviously we're still working with the district to figure out what their tracking is going to be. But we thought that it was just most important for us to not try to reinvent the wheel or recreate the wheel, but to work with what the district already had in place. And so obviously, even with some of those delays, the counseling teams, the post-secondary teams are very intuitive around this process. So they have their own internal tracking that, again, we try to contribute to with making sure that as we are supporting students, both in the high school and on the collegiate side, that we're sharing any information that we have. But ultimately, we are grounded in the data that is coming out of Chicago Public Schools into the high schools that we use to help us understand where students are. Conversely, on the collegiate side, which is a little different, CPS has certainly had a handle on what happens while they're in these high schools, but it dwindles once they leave their, you know, the comfort of the four walls of the high school. And so it really becomes more crucial in college. And so what we've seen is we've had scholars, you know, update their SAIs or student aid reports, and that we've worked with their emails for completion. Ultimately, at Hope Chicago, having financial aid is a part of our requirement. So you need to complete a financial aid application, a FAFSA application, or you need to complete an alternative application. So that being one of the requirements, you know, for our scholarship just really helps further the opportunity for them to make sure that they get it done. So whereas, you know, before when we could or could not thoroughly explain to families why the FAFSA was important, we're able to do that now and really push that same level of communication and messaging because we are one of the entities that helps them translate what they do in high school to what actually happens when they get on a collegiate campus. And so Hope Chicago has invested in student success coaches that we put on the high school teams to literally be the additional human capital to help students navigate the applications, to support the post-secondary and counseling teams around completion, and to really honestly be more hands on deck to further the process of completion as students and families are trying to navigate through it. On the collegiate side, what we did with our partnership with the institutions was we had them invest in a campus contact. So that person is not owned by Hope Chicago, but they're paid by their institution and they work directly with Hope scholars on their campus and with our program manager team. And so again, really being able to streamline where support is needed and working on a case-by-case basis with students for completion has really helped position us as an organization to really unearth the things that are stopping students' navigation of the actual application. Even with it being, you know, new, we also try not to make it seem like this is something that's unorthodox or out of the blue. Yes, this is a part of the process. Yes, it is new, but yes, we have to get it completed. So I would say that the biggest strategy shift that we've had on the collegiate side is really making sure that we sit down with students one by one to understand where they are in the financial aid process. Because again, these are students who are sitting on the college campus now, who are not in front of their parents, who do not have the hand holding of the folks or their high school staff who were doing this all for them. Y'all know y'all go hard in the high schools to get it done. But this, we try to, again, give them additional human capital to help them understand, like, this not only has to get done, but we're going to help you do it. Next slide. What I really want to highlight here around our completion strategies is our population and our progress is really relationship oriented. Michele Peterson and Brigid talked a lot about, you know, partnerships with ISAC and having places and spaces for students to get that get information completed, doing workshops. So we take that information and promote it to Hope scholars through our Hope Chicago app. So again, it's a lot about having the same messaging and being on the same page around what is it that we want scholars to do, where are we setting up the spaces for them to get it done, and how do we usher them and invite them into that space to let them know that they're doing the right things. These are the right behaviors at the right time to get them the outcome that they need. So again, because we know the information is ever changing, we're not focusing our attention on the actual information. We're focusing our attention on the behavior that has to happen to get the information completed. Again, investing in some of the same things that have been used across the board, the net price estimators, encouraging students around like the automatic scholarships, the aim high funds and grants, like making sure that students and families know that these things exist. And then on our side, really trying to understand what are the policies inside the institution. Oh my goodness, I thought I knew everything. I was a part of the college compact when I was in Chicago Public Schools. I was the scholarship manager for Chicago Public Schools. But once I actually got onto this side and began to work more closely with institutions, I recognized that, I really didn't have a clear understanding of what the SAP process was and how that would impact students in their first semester or second semester of school. So again, understanding the policies that are at play at a higher education institution was really crucial for our partnership here at Hope Chicago. Obviously, we know that there's no formal tracking until around about now. Shout out to, I see Rosie Pedraza here, who's a part of the College and Career Specialist team at Chicago Public Schools, and they've been doing an incredible job with trying to lift and push the internal tracking that they have in CPS and connecting us with that information. But again, the relationship. What information we don't know, we try to get. What information we have, we try to push it along. But ultimately, it's about making sure that we're positioning ourselves as a partner to do the work on the ground and then to bring any data that we can into the conversation. The last thing that I want to share on this next slide is really what we've been focusing on the collegiate side. And that's really building a stronger relationship between our program managers and our campus contacts to really make sure that they're addressing each student's needs. Students will tell us all day long that they've done something, that they understand, that they've got it completed. We want to see it. And so really working monthly to check in on student completion on the collegiate side and having a better handle on them, more communication and all of that has really been crucial to our progress with students. And then quite frankly, figuring out what we need to formally ask for and what we've been getting just kind of in our relationship building is huge. So we are trying to position ourselves to formally ask for some level of financial aid completion data. It is taboo in the world of higher ed, but what we're recognizing is that some things have to shift. And we know that there's some things that, we won't be able to get from an institution, but is there any other indicator that will help us understand where students are in this process? And really asking our partners to think critically about what that could be so that we're able to use a timely intervention to get what's necessary for students to get through those barriers. The last big thing I'll say on this slide, and I think we share these slides, is that we have had to move from like monthly to weekly check-in. So our program managers are on, across these 29 campuses at different times throughout the course of the first and second semester. But we're really trying to hone in on what is the appropriate time to make sure that students aren't left behind or that SAP doesn't become, a bigger issue for them. And that has been really crucial for us to determine with each partner. And then kind of with each profile of student that we serve. So ultimately, our big three things as we look towards like our financial aid completion and the support that we need to have in place is that, we have access to parents in a way that, the high school and the collegiate partners do not. So really ushering them into this process and giving them real instructions on what they need to do, why they need to do it, and what the implications are for their student. Is different. It's a different conversation for Hope Chicago. We also make sure that we are, connecting our campus contacts and identifying scholars who are having financial aid issues. Typically, we know in high school what some of those issues are going to be, not just with the application, but with their taxes, with, you know, the relationship with their parents to even get the information on the taxes. Some of those things are still very prevalent with our students and families. And so really encouraging them around knowing that this is the right move and the right behavior, and that we will support them through this process. And then lastly, really working with the school teams to help with like the summer transition work. So when they come back after that first year, what are we doing to make sure that they understand that FAFSA is still huge and that they need to, you know, work towards completion? How do we help usher their parents and families along with knowing that this is a process that has to happen every single year? And I'll end on this. I did go to Howard University. It was my top choice. It was an excellent institution, but I remember, and my mother was the principal of a prominent high school when I was in college. And I remember where I was standing on my campus where she was pushing me to, you know, lock in a certain rate for my student loans or to do this or that as it related to financial aid. And I ignored it, right? So when I think about Hope Scholars now, I really think about what is the language and the information that they need to adjust their behavior to do what's necessary to get them what they need. And so really, you know, at Hope Chicago, we try to be the middleman. We try to really make sure that we're saying things in layman's terms and really helping students and families connect to the people that are going to help support them through this process. So I will end with that. The work that we do at Hope Chicago is not contingent upon us alone. It is absolutely contingent on the partnerships that we have in place with both the district and our institutional partners to help support our scholars to FAFSA completion and ultimately success.
All right, so we have some time for questions.
I have a question. Greetings from Lubbock, Texas. I had two questions for you. So the funds for the scholarship, where is that coming from? Is that a grant or is it coming from the state of Illinois?
That's a great question. Is this being recorded? No, I'm joking.
No.
Right now we are privately funded, so we get donations. We are certainly looking and making an appeal for state funds. But right now we've raised the money internally. Our founders have helped raise the money, and so we've raised the money privately and publicly. So grandmothers have donated, corporations have donated, but I think, you know, outside of the funding and what is really most important when we think about how Hope Chicago is positioned is that we really are able to provide access. And even with the money to pay for tuition and to pay for the full cost of attendance, financial aid is still a huge piece that allows us the ability to do that to the capacity that we would like. So students still need to go through this process, and we don't get to, you know, jump the system by not having them do FAFSA. So it still becomes a barrier for our scholars as well, because we are a gap closing scholarship. That means that we need them to get, you know, the financial aid. We need them to get as much as they can, and then we close the gap to be able to support them for college completion within 4 to 6 years.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, you said once the students go on to college, there is a Hope Scholars counselor. I'm just going to call them a counselor. And so is it mandated that they have to see this person?
So for the sake of this conversation, if you know this crowd, you cannot use counselor loosely here. It has to be defined appropriately.
Advisor, I should say then. Let's
Yes.
say
So
academic advisor.
So our person on the campus side is what we call a campus contact, and they really help them with navigation support. But yes, that is something that is mandated in our partnership that they have to be there to do. And then yes, our students are mandated to meet with them to help them navigate. So in some instances, they are the actual advisor. In some instances, they help them navigate to the advisor. But that is the person who sits with them, who helps them meet with the financial aid advisors, who brings in, you know, like as Michele was saying, National Louis is one of our partners. They bring in ISAC, they bring in, we bring in Ladder Up. But we collectively have to send the message that Hope Scholars, these are places and spaces where you need to be. So that's a part of our collaboration, but yes, students are mandated to meet with the campus contacts.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Allison, I know this is turning into a Hope Chicago.
No, all good. The questions, no. Any other questions for Hope? We still have National Lewis on. Michele, when you were picking the schools, you mentioned that you invested in places where there were strong post-secondary teams. And I'm just curious why. NIPSI is a huge advocate of having post-secondary leadership teams in schools and in districts. And I'm curious why Hope Chicago looked at the post-secondary leadership teams as a criteria.
Absolutely, because this is not a job that can be done alone. Like, we knew that we couldn't come in and make an impact if there wasn't already some level of system in place. And I think Chicago Public Schools has done an incredible job with mandating, in a sense, the post-secondary leadership team, right? So there's a lot of training and development that Rosie, who's in this space right now, has gone through and delivers across the district to make sure that we level the playing field around the advising that needs to happen to support students towards post-secondary pathways. And so we didn't want to buck the system. Hope Chicago is working because there is a system. And what we're able to do with how we're building kind of the next edge of growth is because there's already been a system in place. So, many of the schools, the students were going to college, but the persistence is what they couldn't control. And so again, and when you're dealing with, the majority of first generation students, again, 30% increase in the first 2 years is clear that students want to go. And so what our job is to really do is to help understand how we help families navigate that, and how we, put more things in place to help the nuance of how they make their selections and the behaviors once they get there.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for being here, Michele. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to continue to have some conversation. I'm going to roll us into the idea exchange. And I would love for folks on the call to come off mute and discuss one of these two questions. So your name, your title, like where you're working, and share with us what were some key strategies presented that resonated most with you, or reflect on the presentations and what's a goal that maybe you're going to walk away with to improve FAFSA completion rates. Or if you just have a thought or a question that you want to share outside of these. This is really just a place to share ideas and give feedback to our presenters. Whew. Quiet group today. I guess I have a question for NLU and Hope, since you guys partner together. Like, I kept hearing throughout both of your presentations, like how it takes a village and how many people are involved, especially this year, and getting FAFSA completion moving. What maybe advice would you give a school district who's looking to partner with either a community partner or a university? How would they approach you, and what are some things they might think of as they approach you?
Yeah, I can go first. So really, we're always open to partnerships in any way that we can collaborate, whether that is something as small as, allowing us in your classrooms, or to speak to your students, or your, whichever population that you're working with, to establishing an agreement of sorts where, you come in and you work with our students, or anything else under the sun, dual enrollment opportunities, right? So really, possibilities are endless. So I would say, never hesitate to reach out and, schedule some time to meet with us, and we can talk through kind of what makes sense for us.
I think, partnership for us is crucial. We are always open. I mean, we're new, we're very new. So partnership is really the foundation of who we are. But I also think that, it's important to recognize what real partnership is. And so, we started off with, MOUs that really talk through what we thought was important and crucial for what we wanted. But I would, go so far as to say, as we develop, what was necessary for students, National Lewis really started talking to us about what they were seeing and, strategies that they wanted to put in place and things that they thought, were working or not working. And we had to make some decisions collectively, internally. And, I think what has been very helpful for Hope Chicago is that we look at partnership in a way that says we've got to prove what this outcome is going to be and how we're going to get there. And in some instances, it could be the same things that you've been doing, but in most instances, we have to pivot. Like, it can't be what has been done before. And so I think that National Louis and all of our partners, if I'm being honest, have come to the table knowing that we can't continue to do the same things that we've been doing. And that in and of itself has changed what partnership looks like, in my experience, if I'm being honest, and what partnership looks like now after the pandemic, and now being in a kind of a nonprofit that is positioned, to adjust. The district can't adjust as much, but being a partner who can adjust puts the district in a better position to be able to get students served in the way that's necessary for them to come out of these institutions the way that we want.
I think just the last thing to really tack onto that is partnering as early as you are comfortable partnering. So many times we focus on seniors and what the senior experience is like in transitioning to higher education, but there are, especially from a financial aid perspective, there's plenty of financial aid conversations that can happen at the sophomore and junior level. Not so much obviously completing a FAFSA, but getting them prepared that they're going to do this. Start talking about looking for scholarships, start talking about parents. We had a conversation with Ladder Up about making sure parents are filing their taxes timely, because that does impact financial aid, or they're filing them not just timely, but accurately. So there's lots of things that can be done, I think, as the students progress. We also have a lot of students that attend some of our open houses that are sophomores and juniors because they're interested, they're learning how this process works. And so reaching out to either universities or college access partners or whomever you're comfortable with to see if you can start sending those messages earlier in the high school realm.
Yep, and I think Avery just made a great point too in the chat, and I that was one of the things that I thought is as simple as it seems. The joint messaging is huge. These kids don't know who to believe, and they have so much more access to information that they can look something up and determine, if they're going to believe that. And so, back in the day, we would always have to, I remember we would always talk about, the first word in FAFSA is free. Right. So don't pay for any help to complete the FAFSA. But that was like a serious message that we were putting through, and students still did it every year. There was always somebody, a counselor who had a kid who paid for it. Right. So now when I think about how much communication that they have access to, quite simply, one of our strategies is whatever National Louis is saying that they're doing, we're putting that in the Hope Chicago app and saying, do that. Right? You don't have to do anything outside of what the institution has already said you need to do. And we are your trusted backbone now in Hope Chicago. So if we say that they said that that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. And so again, like, that has been harder than we thought. But, the institutions can always spit out and say, like, we sent 152 emails to this kid. And what we try to combat and say, and we put it on the app 3 times and we saw them engage with it.
All right, well, we're very close to time. I want to thank Michele, and Brigid for joining us today and sharing all the strategies and the work that they're doing. Just a quick item for a wrap up. If you're looking for more FAFSA support, NIPSI can absolutely help. Reach out to us today. I will be sending out this deck as well as the recordings to this later this week, and be announcing, some opportunities to work with NIPSI on FAFSA coming up in the very near future. But if you're looking for support, we've had a lot of success working directly with districts to advance their FAFSA completion strategies. Oops. If you're on social media, engage with us. We're on, Facebook, LinkedIn, get in the know, follow us. And then finally, just if you could, as you leave, complete the exit survey and give us feedback. Let us know how we can improve in the future. Give feedback to our presenters. Just appreciate everyone for being here today, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.